Howdy to all my Chumbas out there, and shout out to all my fledgling Ronins, Rockers, and Boosters. Tuning in today, we're going to be talking about the Soviet Union, the producer of so many of those nice revolvers you boosters out there love playing cowboy with. The Union of Sovereign Soviet Republics is an energy and military superpower in the 21st century and an ally of the EEC. 15 constituent or union republics with a population of 160 million across its 15 unions. The notable ones of which I will discuss a little later on in this historical chart. Now onto the reason you purchased this chart, the history of the Soviet Union in its post-communist era. In the last decade of the old Soviet Union, the reformist premier Gorbachev let Eastern Europe go to weaken the conservative military, which was restricting his reforms. He then transformed the Soviet Union into the Soviet Federation, in which all of its members were granted the status of sovereign states. His successor, Gorbachev, continued with the reforms, but had to confront the growing problem of secessionist movements within the sovereign republics. He then created the improved new Union of Sovereign Soviet Republics, a free trade zone that united the sovereign republics, which was similar to the European community except that it also had its own army and foreign policy. KGB remnants and communist hardliners attempted a coup, which was quickly crushed due to the rebels having overstretched themselves, but it was done at great cost to both men and material, leaving the Soviet Red Army in a weakened state. Sov Oil requested the authorization to establish its own security force, arguing the Soviet army did not have the resources to defend all of its facilities, which in reality did not. The state gave Sov Oil the authorization requested, which to no one's surprise backfired on Moscow, as it led to the Soviet corporate rebellion of 2002, in which Sov Oil declared themselves independent from the Soviet Union. The state took military action to prevent this, but its forces were outmatched by the better equipped and motivated Sov Oil troops. The state was forced to admit defeat and accept the independence of Sov Oil. Sov Oil became the most powerful faction within Neo-Sov. New secessionist movements then threatened to break up the various sovereign republics, but via covert action and diplomacy, Sov Oil prevented this from happening. Sov Oil has a vested interest in keeping the USSR intact and stable, and therefore uses political power, troops, and resources to maintain the decrepit state. Beyond the mass reforms of the 1990s, New Russia was still weakened by its antiquated technology. In 2045, the country couldn't fully feed its hungry population with the failure of the economic and social reforms of the Novskaya Partia, NSP. A new generation of highly aggressive oligarchs was about to rise. Unlike the NSP predecessors, who were content to simply siphon off the remaining assets of the state, the oligarchs were more akin to megacorporations of the roaring 2020s, hungry for power and willing to do anything to accomplish it. Now for the real reason you all bought this history chart. Thanks for doing that. Keeps the water running and the power on. In 2077, the USSR was a nation of regular contrasts. Many citizens were guaranteed free public health care and access to the latest medical technology, complete with modern aerodynes. However, despite the advances in medical coverage and technologies, many new cities were being built to house this increasingly sedentary nomad population. Basic resources remained scarce and pollution was a significant problem. The government created an AI named Girio, with the sole purpose of calculating solutions to these issues. Russia. To Europeans, Russia has always been the great bear to the east. Most of the time, it slept, and when it awoke, nations would fall. During the course of history, gigantic armies would emerge irregularly from the depths of the taiga, shoving away anything in their wake, from the Mongols to the Red Army. Russian influence was mainly felt in the form of major invasions every other century. Now, I could go on a long rant about the history of the noble Russian czars and lords and ladies and how they wasted away the nation's wealth in German casinos. But you don't care about any of that, do you? You're here for what's going on now and why the Union is like it is now. Gorbachev. Gorbachev's successor continued the reforms of the past, but his main problem were the successionist movements within the various republics. Even the tiniest tribe in the giant state suddenly took hold of its new freedom and tried to set up its own little nation. Most of these would-be nations had a 0% chance of survival for economic reasons, as they lacked the many building blocks required to make a nation. Others were too important because of the treasures waiting in their soils: oil, gold, tungsten, titanium, uranium. They were kept a part of the Russian Union by force. Things couldn't continue this way. Thus, Gorbachev had to find a solution, and fast. He founded the new and improved Union of Sovereign Soviet Republics. This was a collection of independent states, akin to the EC, with their own foreign policy and army. They were all united by the free trade zone that encompassed most of the former USSR. To lessen the influence some states had on key industrial facilities and natural resources, Gorbachev convinced the state's leaders to re-socialize the key industries. Thus, oil and coal industries were given independent bureaucracies, which were theoretically governed by delegates from all participating states. All these reforms stoked the anger of the old socialist hardliners. In an effort to bring the country back to its glorious old socialist ways, they allied with the remains of the KGB, the former secret police. Although the KGB had been disbanded by Gorbachev a couple of years earlier, their agents had found their way into the new ministries of interior of the various republics. Together, they staged a coup that was later to be known as the Night of Fire. Armed KGB troops and socialists clashed with the loyal army units in a short and bloody conflict that raged all across the neo-Soviet. The rebellion was put down fast, since the rebels were stretched by their means to spread fire to all republics. Nonetheless, the cost in men and material was high. The Night of Fire gave the directors of the biggest industry, Sov Oil, a welcome excuse to apply for their own security force. They argued that the Soviet army could not effectively defend all of Sov Oil's facilities. From Jakutos the coup, the growing nationalism in the republics made security of key facilities all that more important. The request was granted, and Sov Oil began signing on troops. This proved to be Gorbachev's downfall when the Soviet corporate rebellion took place in 2002. Sov Oil declared itself fully independent of the state, turning into a giant corporation. The government saw this as a threat to inner security and reacted accordingly. But the Republican forces were no match for Sov Oil's highly motivated troops equipped with the latest technology. Grudgingly, President Gorbachev admitted defeat and let Sov Oil go. This blow was fuel to the fires of the rebellion. Gorbachev resigned a few years later, broken in stature. His successor was Igor Stradom from the Ukraine. His first couple of years were marked by efforts to rebuild what had been damaged and destroyed. When the republics had recovered sufficiently, new shouts for national freedom were heard by minorities and republics alike. Surprisingly, it was Sov Oil who countered their movements. Sov Oil had a vested interest in peace and stable economic surroundings. Thus, the corporate directors made deals with the leaders of the secessionist movements and used force whenever diplomacy failed. With these activities, though, entirely undercover, Sov Oil confirmed its status as the most powerful force in the neo-Soviet. Their resources, troops, and sheer political weight made them the driving force behind the continued existence of the Union of Sovereign Soviet Republics. Once known as the breadbasket of Europe, Ukraine, even after 2 droughts, 1 crop killer virus, and overall global weather mess-up, Ukraine stayed as the second greatest food producer in the neo-Soviet Union. Its rich black soil was the primary reason for the Soviet occupation until the 1990s. After the Red Army took off, Sov Oil immediately returned and bought up 30% of all arable land. It was questioned What was better being governed by? Russians or being owned by them? The Hungarians did their thing right, re-socializing the damned Leviathan. In summer, it's green and a pleasant land. In winter, you get dry freeze, unless you're, of course, you're in the vicinity of Chernobyl. In that case, you're glowing green year-round. This doesn't pertain to the Krim. They have higher temperatures and less rain. And that's the state of Ukraine. Moldova is one little mess of a country. Can't think of any other way to put it. There are separatists everywhere. Like literally everywhere. If you ain't part of one secessionist movement, you know someone who is. The Dniester Republic tries to secede from the Ukraine, while pro-Romanian nationalists, yeah, get that through you, wants to incorporate Moldova into Romania. It's like the only reason the country hasn't been disbanded is that the people can't even agree on that. There are plenty of other reasons for the country rather distressing state. The separatists in the Dniester Republic don't have the public support they need for a civil war. The Ukrainians there are happy with the deals they struck with the government. They have the position of a separate republic within Moldova. Good for them. So the rebels have to be content with growing hemp and smuggling their dope to the Ukrainian supporters. A couple of years back, they made a couple of hits on city halls, but when the militia burnt their plantations, this came to a surprising stop. It was rumored they had planned on renewing their so-called fight for freedom with an awful lot of guns going around the DR. The Romanian nationalists are filled with their blind ideals, but most people share a view of it being a complete waste of time. Otherwise, the government would have had a serious problem. They couldn't afford to mess with any of their two neighbors. Moldova depends on Ukraine for basically all energy-related products, from coal to literally anything. Electricity, current, anything. Economy in the country is based on farmers with all the black soil lying around. But if Moldova were to be blockaded, the country would be thrown back to the literal Middle Ages. So thankfully, with the current situation being so bad, no one's going to blockade the country. Hopefully. Now on to everyone's favorite group of countries, the Stans. Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. Since the breakup of the old USSR, there's been much tension between Russia and Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. Those three wanted to form a kind of union within the union. Wow, they really thought that would fly with the Kremlin, didn't they? It didn't. They really did not like the idea. Especially since they had good relations with their neighbor China. Yeah, China, you know. And the Czech Republic? That can't be right. Why are they friends with the Czech Republic? Huh. Yeah, says right there. Friends with Czech Republic. Okay, I guess. Well, these problems are more or less canceled when Orthodox Christians started warring with the Muslims of that area. Huh. Shocking. Story of time. The Muslims started it by declaring the Islamic Asiatic Republic, comprised of parts of Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. The Christians felt threatened by this move and started collecting guns, as every God-fearing Christian man does. As things go, soon there was a major war between the two factions, surprising no one. When the conflict started, moving into the border areas of Russia, the Kremlin sent troops and thematically and hermetically sealed the area off. People still kill each other down there, even though they fell back economically to the level of a third world country. Spice up the soup! Everyone's favorite corporation, Cyberpunk Oil, has a major interest in the area, the Caspian Oil fields. To the horror of their military commanders, they were faced with another Afghanistan scenario. Everyone's favorite country to invade, you know? Meaning badly equipped tribes on one side and hardcore soldiers with state-of-the-art stuff on the other. Baikonur, well, I can't be saying that, right? Was and is the main Russian spaceport. Problem is, Baikonur is in Kazakhstan. After prolonging the leasing deal with the remnants of the Kazakh government, the Russians parachuted a division of Spec Ops troops into Baikonur to just, secure the area. Hey man, nothing says secure as a little army of little green men running in, No even remotely hostile human remained alive, but no one really noticed since the tribal wars in the south never made major news. Story of every Third World War. If it doesn't make the news, does it really happen? Do people really die in those wars? Now on to the last interesting part of this historical shard. The major cities in the Soviet Union. Moscow / Russian SFSR with a population of 12 million. Moscow on the Moskvaka River in western Russia is the nation's cosmopolitan capital and home to the biggest corporation in the region, Kiev Oil. And its historic core is the Kremlin, a complex that is home to the president and czar's treasures in the armory. Outside its walls is Red Square, Russia's symbolic center. It's home to Lenin's mausoleum, the State Historical Museum's comprehensive collection, and St. Basil's Cathedral, known for its colorful onion-shaped domes. St. Petersburg / Leningrad. Russian, 5 million population. Leningrad is a Russian port city on the Baltic Sea. It was the imperial capital for 2 centuries, having been founded in 1703 by Peter the Great, subject to the city's iconic bronze horseman statue. It remains Russia's cultural center, with venues such as Mariinsky's Theater, hosting opera and ballet, and the State Russian Museum, showcasing Russian art from Orthodox icon paintings to Kandinsky's works. Kiev Ukrainian, with a population of 3 million. Kiev is the capital and most populous city of Ukraine. It is in the north-central Ukraine along the Dnieper River. Kiev is an important industrial, scientific, educational, and cultural center of Eastern Europe. Tashkent, Uzbek, with a population of 2.8 million. Tashkent is the capital city of Uzbekistan. It is known for its many museums and its mix of modern and Soviet architecture. The Emir Timur Museum houses manuscripts, weapons, and other relics from the Timurid dynasty. Nearby, the huge State Museum of History, Uzbekistan, has century-old Buddhist artifacts. The city skyline is distinguished by the Tashkent Tower, which offers city views from its observation deck. Baku, Azerbaijan, 2 million. Baku, the capital and commercial hub of Azerbaijan, is a low-lying city with coastline among the Caspian Sea. It's famed for its medieval walled old city, which contains the palace of the Shivalis, a vast royal complex, and the iconic stone Maiden Tower. Contemporary landmarks include the Zahabid designed Haydar Aliyev Center and the Flame Towers, 3-pointed skyscrapers covered with LED screens. Now onto a more boring portion that will probably only get 1 or 2 of you very excited. Everyone's favorite subject, geography. The Soviet Union is the world's largest area controlled by a single political entity, covering approximately 1/7 of Earth's land surface. It's a sovereign union made up of various somewhat independent countries. It is 2.5 times the size of the United States and only slightly smaller in land area than the entire continent of North America. It covers most of the northern half of Asia and a large part of Eastern Europe, extending even into the Middle East. About 1/4 of its territory is in Europe and the rest is in Asia. The territory of the USSR is dominated by the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. That's a mouthful. Having the same borders as contemporary Russia, which covered roughly 3/4 of the surface area of the Union. The Soviets also joint control of the Kuril Islands with Japan. The USSR covers some 8,650,000 square miles, or for you Europeans, 22,400,000 square kilometers. Sov Oil controls most of the politics and landmass of the Soviet Union, having many facilities in every member country. Besides Sov Oil, the Arasaka Corporation also owns bases and facilities in eastern Siberia. Because of the Soviet Union covering 1/7 of the Earth's land, the climate is very different across each territory. However, most of the year, the Soviet territory stays relatively cold. Good old Russian winter. There's wild open spaces and mountains that stretch hundreds of miles, as well as ice and snow that covers all of Siberia. That's the geography of the Soviet Union. So take this all as a reminder that that hammer and sickle on that revolver of yours means a whole lot more than the quality piece. So good luck out there and hope you don't get killed before my next shard drops.